All right. Once you get to YouTube, so let's go to YouTube here. You want to look for my name, which is Some Profs. My channel is Some Profs on YouTube. You don't have to subscribe to it, because subscription requires that you have an account with Google or YouTube. All you have to do is to go to the channel, and once you get to the channel, go to the videos folder or the videos tab here, and it will list all the recordings using a reversed time or chronological order. The most recent ones, will be listed first, and then the really ancient ones will be down there. I have 1,400, clips so far. So you probably don't need to dig any more than, let's say, 20 to 30 at a time. Okay. Yep.
So is there a lot of the note and information is from your videos?
Well, what I talk about during the the face-to-face class, will be recorded. But on top of, the lectures, I will also have, additional videos for your homework assignments, because a part of this class is online, is a hybrid class. I would prefer to teach a full face-to-face class, but they cannot arrange the classrooms for that.
What percentage do you need to actually attend on campus?
Well, we'll go over that. We are meeting here on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 5:20 to 6:40. So we have 80 minutes in each session, and then there are 2 sessions per week. But that still only covers about 1/2 of the amount of time that I need to spend for this class.
Right. So your expectation is our attendance we need to be here on
that is
throughout
correct.
the semester.
Yep. That is correct.
Other classes you can do the online at home, but
certain things you can do online. We can kind of adjust what percentage of lecture and what percentage of lab we're going to do online. I personally prefer to do the lecture here, and then you guys do the lab either at home or in a computer lab somewhere. Yep. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm recording at this point, so if there are any questions, you guys can go ahead and ask. Okay, there are 2 links to the syllabus. One is in HTML and the other one is in PDF. I'm going to use the one in HTML just so that it scales better on this screen. Course information, basically stuff that I just copied and pasted from the college catalog. So there should be no big surprises here. All right, 3 units. And this is, basically the information that you were talking about. We are supposed to have 45 lecture hours and 27 lab hours for this class to make up the 3 units. So are there any questions regarding how much time we need to spend in this class? Now, since the actual time that we're spending here is 80 minutes per session, and then there are 2 sessions per week for 8 weeks, so we have 8 times 160 minutes. And how does that add up? Oh, I cannot do math. Okay, so we have 160 minutes per week, and then times 8. So we have, is it 140? 128 and 40. Right? So we have this many hours, minutes. This is the number of minutes that we are spending in the classroom. Okay, so we divide it by 60 to get the hours. So we have 20 something hours. Okay, 21-ish. So we have 21 hours or so, actually spent in the classroom, in a face-to-face, session. And you can see that that's not even 1/2 of the time that we are supposed to spend in this class. All right, so a good portion of this class is going to be online. The lab, I would say, we'll definitely put all the lab time, online, so that you guys can do the lab part, out of the classroom. And when we're in the classroom, I'll be doing some of the lecture, explaining the concepts. Okay. Any feedback from you guys? I mean, many of you have taken hybrid classes. Yep.
I just walked in here. I just wanted to know what I missed, just what you guys just kind of went over real quick.
Well, I'm doing the screen recording, so you can watch the recording when we are done here.
Okay.
Yep. So I just have to make sure that you get the URL, or know how to find the recording for this class. Okay. All right. So let's move on to the next topic. Next topic is about me. About my name. First name is Tak, T-A-K. Last name is Auyang, spells A-U-Y-E-U-N-G. My office is number 7. In Liberal Arts 133, which is 1 aisle over on that side. Office hours are every day from Monday to Thursday from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock. I'm usually on campus by 7:45, so if anyone wants to come meet with me earlier than that, that's okay too. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I usually would be in my office like a little bit before this class, maybe half an hour or so. But if you want to definitely meet with me during that time, not call me, but email me first to make sure that I'll be here like about half an hour earlier. So this way we can talk about stuff before the class. On Friday, I'm not on campus. I'm off campus online from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock. Phone number is 484-8250. I don't use my school email address because otherwise I just get lots of stuff into there. So all my students make use of my Gmail account. I create one per semester. It just makes it easier to manage my email because now I know those are all your student related email. And the online classroom is what we are using right now is moodle.losrios.edu. Moving on to section information. This is our class. We meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Each time we meet, it's about 80 minutes. The final exam is going to be our last class meeting. That is the same with all of your second 8-week classes or first 8-week classes. Any questions about this part? Yep.
Would you be able to go back so I can see the contact information and all that good, please?
Sure. You can take a picture of this, then you don't have to type it. All right. And before I go any further, I need to double check and make sure I am recording my audio as well, because occasionally I would forget about that and choose the wrong audio channel. Then the entire thing becomes a silent movie. It's still useful, but it's just not as useful. Class policies and rules and stuff like that. There are only 3 excuses or 3 types of excuses that I have to accept. One is sickness of the person who is in class. Jury duty with a copy of the summons, and also military duty. For anything else, whether it's excused or not, it's kind of up to me. Attendance, this is an important part. A student may be dropped from any class when that student's absences exceed 6% of the total hours of class time. So in this particular class, a part of it is online and a part is face-to-face. So the face-to-face, for the face-to-face part, I'm going to take roll, and I know you guys are thinking, but this is not elementary school. Are we really taking roll? Yeah, I have to take roll just to be, consistent. It's actually a kind of like a policy for the college itself. So I'm going to pass the roll sheet around in maybe 10 minutes or so. You can find the references, in this particular document, and the URL link is down there. It's actually from our legal department of the Los Rios Community College District. So I didn't make this up. It actually has been there, since a long, long time ago. You want to report an excuse as early as possible. If you cannot be here on campus, just let me know, and if the excuse is okay, I'll just say excused on the roll sheet, and that'll be the end of that. So that this part covers what else is considered excuse. What else can I excuse? There are certain things in life that I can excuse, but I'll be looking for patterns. So when I start to see a questionable pattern, then it becomes then I will start to look more into it. Okay. So attendance for online classes. This one is kind of like a hybrid class, so it's not quite online and not quite face-to-face. But I would use the face-to-face method for roll taking for this class. So this is the only way I'm going to use to kind of make sure that you guys are here participating in class, instead of using Moodle and check, okay, when was the last time somebody logged into Moodle and actually do something. So I will use the roll sheet for that purpose. Classroom and lab behavior. Classroom and labs are facilities provided for the scheduled and intended coursework. It doesn't mean that you cannot do your other homework assignments, during this time. If someone is running behind in terms of ciss342 homework assignments, at the intermediate Linux class, it's not like I'm going to come over and say you cannot do this, during my class. It's just that if you spend your attention somewhere else, when I'm talking, you may not be able to get everything that I'm trying to teach, unless you're really familiar with the material already. Then it's you can kind of do other things, as long as it does not disturb other people in the classroom. Any behavior in the classroom or lab that interferes with teaching or learning is not going to be tolerated. And this includes disruption, bullying, excessive chatting, and so on. Chatting is kind of bad because when somebody is chatting, students around the person or the people who are chatting, it makes it difficult for those people to hear what I am saying. So that's why chatting is not good. Pets, I don't see anyone bringing a pet here, so I don't think it's going to be an issue. But in the past, I have had issues with students bringing in dogs as pets, not working dogs, and it can cause disruptions and issues. Cell phones ringing. That reminds me, because I don't want my cell phone to be the first one that rings in the classroom. So I'm gonna turn it down first. I find a really good app for scheduling ringer off time. It's called Tasker, Tasker, for Android. I'm not sure whether they have a port for iOS or not, but it's really neat little program. You can, in addition to just turning off the ringer, there are other ways, other things that you can do with it too. It's really kind of interesting. It's almost like a full programming interface, but without you having to learn any programming language. No eating or drinking in this classroom. Food and drink items are to be sealed or closed during the lecture or during your duration here in this classroom. And non-compliant students, will be asked to leave the classroom, after I, tell that person to stop a few times. Conduct code. This part mostly has to do with academic dishonesty, and I'm just gonna skip the first part here and skip to this part. Academic dishonesty is an act of deception in which the student claims credit for work or effort of another person or uses unauthorized material or fabricated information in any academic work. It occurs when students attempt to show possession of a level of competency, knowledge, or skill that they do not possess. Okay, that's my definition of academic dishonesty. The means or how it is done is not even important. Okay, so that means when you guys are working on your homework assignment or your assessments, you have to do it independently and originally. Just try not to work as a group when it's assessment time. When you're studying, it's okay. That's not a problem to study together. Any academic dishonesty may be reported to administration. I usually start with the dean, Derek Booth. All participants involved in academic dishonesty will not receive points for the work submitted, and this includes the person who actually quote-unquote originates the material, if there's one person who originates the material within a group. Because if that person is actively, willingly participating in this attempt, that person will also be a part of this entire group and will be considered dishonest from the perspective of the class. So here's the most important part. You're supposed to work independently. So that means without the aid of anyone during or prior to the activity. It can be your homework, can be your test. You also have to be working originally, which means without copying or significantly deriving from the work of others, unless I tell you ahead of time. Okay, go find a web page that talks about blah 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 and give me the URL. That obviously does not count because I'm asking you to find existing work out there on the internet for a particular topic. Okay. All right. Any questions? All right. This class feels very different from my usual classes because with my usual classes, I have mostly fresh graduate from high school in my beginning programming classes, so it feels a little bit different. Okay, the grading part is easy. Letter grade equivalence is like this. Anyone who's getting less than 12.5% is getting an F. From 37.5% down to 12.5% is a D. Between 37.5% and 62.5% is a C already. And a B is from 62.5% to 87.5%, and A is anyone with at least 87.5%. So that's a pretty linear scale. I do not start at 60%. Doesn't make the class any easier though. It's just a different scale. The proportions and components of this class: 20% will come from your homework assignment, 40% comes from the final exam, and then depending on the class, I think for this class I might give you a project instead of an exam. I have not decided yet. So that's 20%, and there's another one with another 20%. Grading FAQ score is assigned based on observable competency and not effort. So are there any questions about this statement? No? Okay. If I give you multiple choice questions, which is likely in a class like this, the total number of correct answers, I'll take it back. The total score of correct answers would equal the total score of incorrect answers of the same question. So that means, if you have 5 choices, 1 is correct, the correct answer has 1 point, then the other 4 incorrect answers, each one will carry a negative of a quarter point. Now, why am I doing this? Because if I have 2 people, you're both knowing absolutely nothing about Linux or computer security at all. Both people try to take the test. One person sits down and say, well, since I know nothing about this subject matter, I'm going to save myself some time and I'll just leave without answering a single question. That person is going to get a score of what? 0, because there's no answer. The other person decides, well, I'm going to give it a try. Okay, I think this is my lucky day. And that person would just kind of randomly pick some answers, right? Now, if I do not have this adjustment, that person will end up with a score just because of luck, right? If you just answer all A's, given that the distribution of choices are randomized, that person is going to get one fifth of the questions right. So what this is going to do is to balance that 1/5 out with the other 80% of wrong answers. So that person, who just want to try his or her luck on that day, would also end up with a score of 0. That's basically what this is really about. Okay, so it's not a penalizing type of policy. It really is just to balance out the luck factor. Yep.
If you don't answer a question, or can you not answer a question when you submit a quiz?
I believe so, but in Moodle that can be, I have to double check on that, because once you select a radio button, is there a way to unselect the radio button? That really is the question. I'm not 100% sure. But on the other hand, if you do not select anything and then you just click on the next question, then the previous question is just marked as not answered. You just get a 0 because it's not answered. Well, it depends. Because if you have 1 correct answer and 4 incorrect answers, whether you take your chances to just randomly pick one or not, over a long period of time or over a lot of questions, it just boils down to 0. So it's the same as not answering if you cannot rule out one possibility. On the other hand, if you can rule out one particular answer and say, okay, I know this has to be wrong, okay, it cannot be the right answer, then you're only left with 4 choices, right? So in that case, chance is going to actually standing on your side, because the probability of guessing the right one is now 25%. But since each wrong answer is only deducting a quarter of a point, now you actually stand a pretty good chance of getting a non-negative score out of this. But it's all based on chance. Some people are particularly unlucky, so they always pick the wrong choice when there are at least 2 choices left. So those people would end up with a negative score. The good thing is Moodle does not allow me to enter a negative score for an entire assessment. So it rounds everything up to at least a 0. I have yet to see anyone actually doing that, getting so unlucky and not so unfamiliar with the subject matter to get a negative score and ended up, rounding up to a 0. So I don't think it's going to be a real issue, but I do want to bring this up just so that you guys know, how the points are allocated. Some questions are graded based on key indicators, which are objective, observable characteristics of the submitted work. There's no late submission unless there's an excuse that is acceptable, like sickness. Okay, so we're
Now
blazing.
those tests will all be here. They're not online at home,
They're all online.
and you take
Yeah.
them at your house.
Yes,
I mean,
except
okay.
for the final exam, and also the midterms. There will be a mixture of both. Okay, so there will be some assessment done here, and then there will be some assessment that you can do online. So I might give you some quizzes, like after each topic, like a few points, of quizzes, so that way you can kind of check, how much of the material you have absorbed, and So that would be some of those points too. All right. So I don't think you guys need me to go over this too much. When you're helping each other, just make sure that you're helping each other understand the concept, but do not use the homework assignments as a medium for helping out each other. Okay, use something else. Use some topics that I talk about in class during lecture. Use somebody else's example, but try not to use homework assignments as a medium, because that makes it very easy to cross the line to become non-original work or non-independent work. Okay. So next one, study habit. Class attendance is important. Paying attention in class. I know most of you come here after working for a full day, so I know sometimes you may be tired. Reading what I will be covering before the lecture will be helpful, because that kind of helps prepare your mind for the topic ahead of time. Study again after a lecture can be helpful. Since I'm doing a lot of screen recording, use that as a resource also. Okay. And I have no idea why this is here. Okay, I think I have a issue with the software, because the schedule is supposed to be the last part of it, but it's not here. The PDF may have the correct one. Let me double check on the PDF.
No, sir.
Sorry?
Unless we're starting something in January of 2000.
So that's wrong also?
Yeah.
I must have been modifying the wrong file then. Okay, I'll fix that and let you guys know when I have the syllabus all fixed up. Alright, so we have just gone over the syllabus. So it's time to get started with, the first activity is not this one. Let me get rid of this one first, because it's not, it's a leftover from last semester, from past semesters. So let's see, I want to get rid of the choice here. I can't even see the edit button up here, so let me change this. At least hide this one. This is not yours. This one is yours. Syllabus acknowledgement in the overall topic is basically just a way for you to acknowledge that you know where to find the syllabus, and you know the content of the syllabus. So I can just do a preview. It consists of one single question, and that question is: this activity lets you acknowledge that you know where to find the syllabus and that you have visited links, read and understood the syllabus. Do not submit this choice until you have done all of the above. And then you only have two choices here. I acknowledge that I know where to find the syllabus, and that I have read and understood the content of the syllabus in its entirety. Or B, I refuse to acknowledge. Please drop me from this course. So those are the only two choices. It's important to do this one because it's as silly as it might seem. It serves two purposes. The first purpose is this way I know that you know the class policy for this class, and then the second one is I would use this as a prerequisite to some of the homework assignments. So until you have made this choice, you cannot get started with some of the homework assignments. Okay. All right. Okay, and of course there's a URL to the YouTube channel on for this particular for my channel. So that's also a direct link to YouTube if you want to go from here to YouTube directly. Are there any questions?
So do we have to buy a book or?
There are no books for this class, right? So I will use my own material, or I will have links to other articles that I find is appropriate for this class. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Go ahead. There was a question.
It says that we need for the people who are on the wait list, we need the enrollment code to be able to see our Moodle course.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'm going to open this up. How many people are on waitlist? So we got 3 people on waitlist. Okay, this is what I'll do. I'm going to go to the course and change. Oh no, it's not guest access. I remember now. It's it has to do with users, enrollment methods, and I will turn on student self-enrollment. And the enrollment key is Linus, Linus, and I will assign you a manually added student role. Save changes. And this one I can remove. Alright, so now if you're trying to add to the class manually, you should be able to get to the class, navigate and find the class under CISS as a discipline. Click on the class and then use Linus, Linus, all lowercase, to get into the class. So that will at least get you into the class. You will be able to see the content just like everybody else, and you'll be able to do the homework just like everybody else. But that does not mean that you're actually officially on roster. I still need to give you the permission number in order for you to be added to the class. Okay, but this gives you a quick access to the class material.
It worked.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to pass the roll sheet at this point. So go ahead. Thank you. All right. Okay, so let me ask you one question. Does anyone remember whether this class has a prerequisite or not?
No prerequisite.
There's absolutely no prerequisite to this class. Okay, which makes teaching this class a little bit of a challenge. Okay.
Oh, excuse me, sir. Do
Yep.
you want us to initial it or check it?
Just initial. Yep. So that makes teaching this class a bit of a challenge because I can have an entire class of people with absolutely no experience with command line whatsoever. Command what again? You have to type something to ask the computer to do something. How do I drag something? No, there's no dragging. How do I click something? No, there's no clicking. On the other hand, I can also have an entire class of students who have taken CISC323, the Linux class, the beginning Linux class, and CISC324, the intermediate Linux class. So how fast we can go and how far we can go depends a lot on the composition of this class or students in this class. So I just need to do a quick survey here to see who already has some exposure to Linux. In other words, who already know how to do some of the command line stuff. Let's say that's about, I would count it as 60% of the class. What about the other 40%? Do you have any exposure to, let's say, the command line, the what we call the DOS box in Windows? Okay, you have some exposure to that?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have some exposure to that.
I used to have my own box.
Your own box?
It used to.
Okay, but the DOS box that I'm referring to is the command line interface in
No,
Windows.
I'm talking about Linux box.
Linux box. Okay,
Yeah.
so that works. Yep.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay. How many people have taken a networking class? Okay, so that's actually pretty encouraging because most people have taken at least one networking class. So you guys know about TCP/IP, what is an IP address, what is a port number, that sort of thing. Okay, so I have a network strong class, and not everybody has exposure to Linux. Okay, that's okay. As long as I know, what people already come with, as a background, that really helps me to kind of prepare the material, and also help me decide how much time to spend on a particular topic. So what I'll do is I will start on topic 1, and let me just kind of zoom in a little bit just so that the font is a little bit bigger. So we'll get started on topic 1. The orientation is officially done. Okay, we covered the syllabus, we covered the usual stuff of getting started with the class. So now we can start with topic 1. Topic 1 only talks about orientation and how to set up the homework infrastructure, which is a kind of like an important topic. If you do not use a Linux box as your main operating system, doing homework assignment in this class can be a little bit of a challenge because you have to do, guess what, all the homework on a Linux box, a Linux machine. There are several ways to do it. You can either use a virtual machine to do it, or you can also use a live ISO distribution to reboot your computer and actually use Linux in that setting. Each one has an advantage and each one has a disadvantage. Does everybody know, or how many people understand what I mean what it means when I said an emulator or a virtual machine? Okay, so we have some people understanding what is a virtual machine and not everybody.
Now, does that include the live, when you say, is that live ISO, is that a virtual machine?
It can be. You can combine those two concepts. In other words, you can combine the concept of a live distribution and run it inside a virtual machine. So that works as well. But it kind of defeats one of the original advantage of running a virtual machine, because I can give you a virtual machine that is small, it doesn't take up a lot of space, it starts up really fast, and it just works. If you
mean
run
physically small?
No, it just doesn't take up a lot of RAM or processing resources in the computer, from that aspect. Okay, so there are two ways to do homework assignments in this class. You can either use an emulator. An emulator works well in Windows until we have to have the outside world to poke the machine that is in the inside. Okay, because in that case it becomes kind of difficult to have your Windows operating system or the Windows environment to poke the virtual machine to see if a security problem is fixed. Do you guys see what I mean? Because this is a security class, so we have to kind of be able to assess, okay, is this box still open or is it secure? Did I close that port? Okay, and there are ways to do it in Linux that is really neat, because what we can do in Linux is I can run multiple virtual machines at the same time and have all of those virtual machines to connect to each other through a virtual Ethernet switch. So now I can launch attacks all day long within that particular switch, and no one on the outside can see anything. So I would not be alerting, network security people on campus, because they won't be able to see the traffic that is actually all virtual on a particular machine. But setting that up, can be confusing, and it takes a little bit of time to teach you guys, how to get there. But I'm thinking that will be the best solution, because it really gives you all the options of launching attacks to one machine, securing one machine and test it again. Yep.
I meant to ask, that page right there under general forum topics, mine comes up with no discussion.
With no discussion?
It says there are no discussion topics yet in forum.
That means nobody has posted anything yet.
Oh, I shouldn't see what you've got.
Because that's my instructor view, is not a student view.
Understood.
So a student view would look a little bit different. Yep. Okay. Well, before we get any technical stuff, let's talk about just in general, what are we talking about when we are talking about computer security. And before let me hit that slide first, and then I'll ask the question. Okay, why are you here? It's not a philosophical question. It is just a practical question. Why are you here? Nobody wants to say anything? Go ahead.
Interesting. I'm here because the last course that's offered for my degree lesson has been offered the last few years, and I'm hoping this will fulfill the
Okay.
requirement and the topic I'm interested in.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I want to learn how to administer and take care of Linux OS systems.
Okay.
And on a personal level, I run OpenSUS v13.1, so I can work through some issues that I'm having right now.
Okay, all right, that sounds good. Yep.
Well, I've done Linux installs and firmware updates, so I wanted to get familiar with this side of the security.
Firmware update.
For Unix, sometimes we have to update the Unix.
Okay, the operating system
the
itself.
The OS updates, whether it's Red Hat or.
Okay, so are you guys using Red Hat or a Debian
They
type
were. I
distribution?
haven't worked there for a while, I used to work for Hewlett Packard and
Okay.
IT software, so we used to do Linux installs.
Yep. It's
and-
interesting. HP and IBM were they were the first two big companies to embrace open source and Linux. Okay, anyone else? Nobody else wants to volunteer anything? Okay, I hope nobody here is trying to get a Security Plus certificate out of this class, because if I cannot assume anything about your networking background, there's really not a whole lot I can do about security from the networking perspective. But we'll still go through those concepts in this class. All right, so let's go ahead and start with this particular slide. Each slide is called a topic. Well, it's not a topic. It really is just a document. How do we make a computer secure? Okay, to make a computer secure is okay. This is why I'm asking the question earlier. What are you trying to get out of the class like this one? There are some really practical considerations, like I need to finish my degree, get a certificate out of here. Okay, that's completely reasonable. But there are other practical reasons as well. Is if I run a Linux box, how do I make my Linux box secure? And that seems to be a very simple answer, but it's really not a very simple answer, because it depends on a lot of factors. What do we mean when we say a computer is secure? One of the things you want to ensure when you say I want my computer to be secure is for your data to stay on the computer, and nobody should be able to access your data without your permission. Okay, is that making any sense? Okay, and then the second one is you retain control of the computer, and no one should be able to control your computer in any way without your permission. Okay. Are there any questions about these two statements? Seems to make perfect sense, right? But let me tell you one thing. These two things are really a thing of the past. What do I mean by, it's a thing of the past? I mean, obviously these things are very important. Okay, let me present you with one little idea. Here's my little thumb drive, 4 gig thumb drive, with the live ISO already burnt into it. Okay. In other words, if I reboot a computer with this USB thumb drive, I can run pretty much the same environment as what I'm doing right now. Okay. This drive here has the entire operating system installed. It also has almost all of the tools that I personally use all the time installed as well. It does not have any personal information. Okay, I don't have my tax return here. I don't have anything that is personally identifiable on this thumb drive. Okay, when I plug this thumb drive and use it, and just use it to access the access websites and so on, I don't really have anything stored on this thumb drive or the computer that I'm using that is sensitive. So the first point is not really applicable anymore, because I'm not really storing anything on the computer or on my thumb drive. This will work on the computer without any internal hard drive. Okay, as long as you have 4 gigs of RAM or even 2 gigs of RAM, this will work. So the first point does not apply anymore. You retain control of the computer. No one should be able to control your computer in any way without your permission. Well, that's still important because you don't want to turn your computer into a part of a botnet. But the nice thing about running an operating system out of this is even if your computer gets infected, you just turn it off and turn it back on again, that infection will be gone. No one can permanently attach a backdoor to your computer because nothing is saved. There's no place to actually save anything. Is that okay?
What about on the computer that does have your tax return?
The computer that does have my tax return is not in my household because TurboTax is now pushing people to use their website instead of using your own computer to install Linux, to install TurboTax.
You're gonna have a machine somewhere that has lots of personal information on it, right? I mean, that's
Correct.
a good tool that we could live off of.
Yep, but we are at an computer age, where we are storing less and less and less on our equipment, and we are relying more and more and more on the cloud to store and process information. Is that what you guys are seeing too as a trend? Okay. I just got a new cell phone. Okay. But when you look at how you use a cell phone and how much is actually stored on a cell phone, for me, I don't really store a lot of music or video on my cell phone. Most of my stuff is in the cloud. So that means, if I get a new cell phone, I just have to reinstall certain apps and I'm good to go again. I don't need to back up, gigabytes upon gigabytes of stuff and then restore all those, gigabytes of stuff. I only have like kilobytes, okay, maybe hundreds of kilobytes of stuff.
I wonder if the cloud server's down.
Then you are not the only one who's going to suffer. It's just like,
Would you be inclined to still have backups that you keep of your own?
Okay, let me ask, how many people have a backup generator at home? Okay, how many people have a backup solar water heater at home in case your gas heater or your electric heater is not functioning anymore? Or your own backup well in your backyard for water supply? So the point is, so the point is, computer networking and cloud service is becoming quote unquote commodity item now. It becomes a basic infrastructure for people like us to operate. As much as we kind of sometimes we don't want it to be that way, it does offer a lot of advantages. I mean, if you look at the use of Chromebook, okay, how expensive is a Chromebook? Are they in the like $200 can get you a reasonably fast one. You can actually do work on it. Okay, so let's say one day you were working on the driveway, you forget to take your Chromebook away before you back up your car rolled over your Chromebook. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna try to repair the Chromebook? No. You just go buy a new one, right? Now, what if the internal hard drive, the SSD drive of your Chromebook is completely destroyed physically? Would you be losing anything? No. In the case of Chromebook, you might be losing a few configurations that you have done to your Chromebook, but for the most part, your documents, your email, everything is online, is in the cloud. Okay, you get a new Chromebook, you set it again, and everything is back. Is that making any sense? This was not the case even 5 years ago. It was not even like this. Okay, we saw a trend about 5 years ago going in this direction, but it's here now. Okay, so that's why when we talk about computer security, it's not as much what you store on a computer. It is also not as much how people can gain control of your computer. It is more about transmission now. Okay, because no matter where your data is stored, if it's cloud-based, you'll be getting your text form information from the cloud, and then you'll be entering stuff, and you'll be submitting all that information back into the cloud. So if someone can intercept that transmission and decrypt that transmission, then your information will be disclosed. Okay, or somebody who's not supposed to have that information will end up having that information. Am I making any sense? So that's why there should be a third item here. It is the interception of information transmission that is actually more important now than what you're storing on the computer. Because a lot of us don't even store a whole lot of stuff on the computers anymore. Which makes me wonder who's going to buy those 4 terabyte hard drives. I have 500 gigs on my computer, and I have not filled up 250 gigs out of that. My office computer has a 160 gig hard drive, and I still have 20 to 30 gigs left. Yep, go ahead. Oh, you were answering the 4 terabyte hard drive thing?
That would be me. I don't store anything on the cloud.
Okay.
I don't believe in the cloud.
Do you also rate your 4 terabyte hard drives to become like a RAID 5, so you end up with at least like 12 terabytes of total capacity?
Update them every so often.
The problem is, how do you back it up if you have terabytes and terabytes of stuff?
Very, very careful.
Or slow?
Well, carefully doesn't necessarily mean slow.
Okay. Well, this is a security class, so I'm not going to get too much into backing up something. But when you have terabytes of stuff, getting a complete backup of that, that all by itself is an issue. There are people whose only job is what we call a storage architect. So their only job is to configure the storage subsystem of huge server systems, just to make sure that a daily backup can in fact be done on a daily basis. Because if it takes 48 hours to back up the entire drive, then it won't be a daily backup anymore, would it? All right. So how can someone get control over your computer, or how can someone get to see the transmission stuff that you're transmitting out of your computer? Well, the first one is physical access, and if you leave your notebook computer in a coffee shop, it is simple to see how how someone can steal your computer. Okay, my grammar is kind of broken up when I wrote this. We will see later in this course that getting a computer physically stolen does not necessarily mean its data is lost or stolen. On most computers, that is the case. Okay. In other words, if you use partition level encryption, you can have your computer stolen, you can have your hard drive stolen, but to that person who stole your hard drive, it's just a random bits floating around. Okay, they cannot really make use of any information that you store on the hard drive. Now, to you lost the hard drive, you lost the computer, but if you have a backup, you still have that data somewhere else. Okay. Most people understand the importance of physical security. As such, physical security of a computer is typically not very important. At least in this class, it's not considered very important. The only part, or the only time when physical access to a computer is really, really important is on a computer where there are many people using it, or it is used, to store sensitive data. Does anyone work for a data center, or has worked for a data center? What does the security look like, to get into a computer, get into a data center?
They had to make appointments in advance, photo IDs.
Okay.
To know who was coming in, what time they were coming in.
Mm-hmm. Anything else? Do they, do they fingerprint everybody to get in? Yep.
I worked at Sac State for a little while in one of their IT departments, and they were very picky about who touched their machines. That was for sure.
Okay. Who has access, physical access to the machines?
Access, or even password access for remote access. They didn't want to
Right.
give any of that out either.
In a school setting, they have a set of laws, corresponding to student privacy. So they have to make sure that no one can get into the server room, with USB thumb drives or tape drives.
Surely wasn't me going in there.
Yeah, and suck up all the data and then release it, in one form or another. Okay. All right. So that's one thing that's important, but in this class we don't consider that as a main topic at all. Okay. Then the next type of attack on the machine, or where you can lose the security of a box, is active invasion. In other words, somebody is trying to get into your machine actively. As long as a computer is network connected, it is subjected to active invasion by other computers connected by the network. Okay, it used to be done by floppy disks. Okay, we used to carry floppy disks around, and some can be infected by viruses, and some people can walk into your machine, put the floppy disk real fast onto your machine, click a few things or double click on the icon. Haha! Now I infect your machine. That's not really a big factor anymore, is it? Well, it is not a big factor. It still happens because I think this is the reason why Stuxnet got into the Iranian nuclear facility. I think that's the report is it was done by a USB thumb drive. So it can still happen, on machines that are intentionally left out of the network for the very reason of trying to avoid an active attack.
If it is on that network, doesn't the firewalls and with IPs prevent somebody from getting through?
What is preventing your firewall of getting compromised first? Somebody has to take the attack, right? Whether it's a firewall or your router or something else, something has to be there to get the request from the outside to process that. So whoever is doing that first is the first line of defense. Okay, and if you think your firewall is 100% secure and then nothing can get through, well, think about what is in that box. It's either Linux or some other custom operating system that somebody wrote, right? So it can have its own flaws, can have its own security holes. So you cannot rely on that 100%. Okay, from our perspective as consumers, it probably is good enough for most cases, but it is not a 100% protection either.
I was wondering because at a physical standpoint, if you've got an IP address and a MAC address, they'd have to duplicate it or have to know how to do that.
You mean cloning a MAC address?
Yes.
That's actually pretty easy to do.
Okay.
Yep. It can be done. It's actually not hard. Once they get into your network, you're in big trouble. An active invasion is characterized by an external agent, something outside, not on your machine, is trying to gain unauthorized access to a particular computer. And this is one form of attack that we will talk about in this class. The type of program that would do an active invasion are typically called worms instead of virus, because they're active. They're just poking the ports of your machine and see which one is open. And if one thing is open, they would try to see if they can use known existing ways to get into your machine using that network port. Active invasion can succeed in several ways. The first way is the oversight of the configuration, analogous to someone forgetting to close and lock an entrance. And this used to be very common with Windows. Okay, and it has to do with the assumption of how Windows machines would be used. Okay. Is that making any sense? It is still happening now. If you install Windows Home Edition and you add a new user, what is the role of that new user? A regular user with limited permission or an administrator that can install software? The first or the second?
Second.
The second, that's right. Okay? And that's by design. Okay? But why would Microsoft do something like that? This has nothing, absolutely nothing, to do with the anti-kernel being insecure. In fact, the anti-kernel is probably as secure as the Linux kernel. I don't think it is any less secure. But if you give everybody administrative right to do something, especially people who tend to browse the web without knowing what kind of threats is out there, then your system is not secure anymore. Okay, because if they step on something, that something can now run as administrator and do massive damage to the entire system. As opposed to someone with limited access, you step on something, yeah, maybe your account will be affected, but the system as a whole should still be intact. Countering this sort of invasion involves buttoning up an operating system. In other words, if you look at all the ports that are open and have a program to respond to those ports, you have to ask yourself, do I need to leave this port open? No, that's a good question. It was not very long before now. It wasn't very long when I checked the log of my Linux box. I had Samba already installed on that box. And at that time, I was connecting my box directly onto the Shore West connection. So I see other computers of other Sure West customers as my local area network. Okay, and the interesting part was I can see a lot of attempts to connect to my drive, and also a lot of advertisement and say, hey, I got my C drive here, who wants to share? Well, that falls into this category, doesn't it? Maybe it's not a good idea to broadcast to everybody and say that, hey, I have an entire C drive here, who wants to share? Let me know. Probably not a very good idea from the security perspective. Another way for an active invasion to succeed is an exploitation of a vulnerability. In other words, it is not an oversight of configuration. It is an oversight, but it's a deeper oversight. It has to do with when people write programs, they did not write it correctly and allow buffer overflow, buffer overrun, and also stack overflow exploits to actually execute. Does anyone know how those particular exploits work? Okay, do you guys want to explain it, or do you want me to kind of go over that kind of quickly?
Go over it quickly, please.
I'll go over it quickly. Okay. Those particular exploits or vulnerabilities have to do with protocols, standards. Okay, so let's just say that the standard of a JPEG file is the first part. I don't know JPEG format that well. Okay, so I'm just gonna fake it. So the first part is I was just assume that the first 256 bytes of a JPEG file up to 256 bytes is called a header file, or the header portion of a file. It can contain comments and other things that is not important. Okay, and the standard says it will be terminated by a null character. Basically a character with 00 or all 0 as bits to terminate that description. And then after that we have some other stuff. Okay. So whoever is writing the JPEG file decoder to display the image will make the assumption and say, okay, according to the standard, we can have up to 256 characters here. So I'm only going to allocate a buffer of up to 256 characters to store the header portion of a JPEG file. Reasonable assumption, right? Because according to the specification, it can only be up to 256 bytes. So here comes a hacker, okay, and say, I'm going to see what happens when I specify a header that is longer than 256 bytes. A proper program would look at the malformed JPEG file and say, hey, this is not according to specification. You're only supposed to have up to 256 characters, and since you're not terminating within 256 bytes, I'm going to consider this file invalid and not even to parse it any further. Okay, that would be the proper response to a malformed JPEG file. But a lot of files or a lot of JPEG decoders are not written that way. Okay, they basically just assume that the file is properly formatted, and as a result, they will keep copying stuff from the file to the quote-unquote buffer until they see the null character, and that can be like a few thousand bytes later. So now, what you have allocated is only 256 bytes, but you're overwriting not only the 256 bytes, as the buffer, you're overwriting like a few thousand bytes over that limit. So now the question is, what happens to all that stuff that is quote-unquote overrunning the buffer? Well, it's sitting there somewhere in memory. So the next task for an exploit to work is to transfer control over what we call the payload, which is the extra bytes, the bytes that are beyond the 256 bytes. And there are ways to do it, depending on what program you're running. People who write the exploits actually have to experiment quite a bit in order to find out how to make that part work. But once they get that part work, that means if your web browser is just decoding a JPEG file, you can end up with your computer compromised. It doesn't have to do anything that is even suspicious. You can be just going to eBay, looking at a server rack, you click on the picture, and now your computer is compromised.
So basically that extra byte space, when you're somebody, they can just get all that extra data where it was only supposed to have 256, but since they made it wider, there's kind of still an extra data or something to fill up that empty space.
It's not an empty space issue. It has to do with someone intentionally does not follow the standard
right,
and
they,
make a
well,
portion
well, yeah,
larger.
They're intentional, the empty space they created.
It's not empty.
Oh, it's not
See,
empty.
the thing is, it's not empty.
Available?
It has the payload. That's the malicious code in the JPEG file. That's where it is stored, hidden.
So there's enough room to get all that in there.
Oh, easily.
Yeah, so that's what they
Yeah,
did.
it doesn't take much code to actually gain root access or shell access of a computer. Once you have shell access, it's just a few more commands to open up a port, send something back to mothership, and kind of the rest is just history.
It won't do them any good, would it?
Sorry?
If it's encrypted.
If it's encrypted? Well, this has to do with the JPEG file being decoded. Now, you can imagine this has nothing to do with the JPEG. It might have something to do with a protocol that your computer is already open to decode. Okay, can someone name a particular protocol that your computer is usually programmed to decode, to respond to? A port number, a port that is normally open. NTP, okay, NTP or Network Time Protocol, okay, that's a good one. So NTP, is a application protocol sitting on top of TCP/IP, right? And whatever program that is dealing with NTP will assume, anyone who's trying to talk to me will know what NTP is, will properly format, the request, the headers and whatnot, correctly. So someone can intentionally use that opportunity and say, I'm going to intentionally malform an NTP, request. Okay, this part is supposed to be 256 bytes. I'm going to make it 4,000 bytes. Okay, the extra chunk is basically malicious payload. Okay, and if your NTP program, server program, is not properly written, it may not check that this is only supposed to be up to 256 bytes. So now you're overwriting certain portions of your program's memory space, and if there's a way to transfer control to the overwritten part, then the malicious code has a chance to run. And if that runs and your NTP server is running in administrative mode, then the malicious code will also be running with elevated privileges. And the infection is what happens next. It can be very bad.
Is FTP and Telnet considered protocol?
Yes, NTP and Telnet are both considered protocols, and those would be the first ports to close by any tool that can scan for problems, because both FTP and Telnet by themselves, they're both using plain text for password transmission, so they are bad in many ways. People should not be using Telnet or FTP anymore.
Is email considered a protocol, or that's something?
Email is SMTP, and it is a protocol. SMTP can also be over SSL, so that means it can be encrypted. But anything that can respond according to a protocol is has a chance of getting compromised. That's basically my point. Okay, so in the case of an exploitation because of a vulnerability, this form of invasion is more difficult to deal with because it is not your configuration. You can do configuration until your face turns blue, and it's not going to help because it is the program itself that is at fault. Because the other part is you first have to know what is the problem, because if the software publisher, like let's say Microsoft, already knows that a particular part of the operating system has a security hole, they would have plugged it. You would have gotten the update on Tuesday. So the fact that it is not plugged means that the publisher does not even know about it, and those are called zero-day exploits. Okay, if you look up the term zero-day exploits, it refers to exploits that no one has discovered to date. And Stuxnet had 3 of those? It was a very advanced virus. It was not a run-of-the-mill garden variety kind of thing. It was nasty. That thing was, that's the nuke equivalence when it comes to viruses and malware. If you consider a normal virus, that Norton and other tools can report as a bomb, those will be firecrackers by comparison. Stuxnet is a nuke. Yeah, it will take considerable resources to make Stuxnet to begin with. All right, so let's move on to here. So in our analogy, this type of problem is equivalent to a lock having a particular defective tumbler, or the tumbler has a defective design, so that if you put in a key of a certain shape and jiggle it a few times, all the tumblers will basically lock in a certain position, and your lock is basically useless. But as a homeowner, do you know that? Maybe, maybe not. It's not like you are leaving the door open or unlocked. To you, the door is closed, the gate has closed, and you locked it already. The problem is inside the lock mechanism, not with how you secure your house. So these are more nasty problems, because until the lock manufacturer sends you a recall notice and say that do not use this lock anymore, you don't even know there's a problem. Okay. So to counter this kind of invasion, keeping your operating system and all the programs up to date is important, because this is the only way to help reduce the risks of having this type of invasion happening to your computer. The other type, the inactive or passive invasion, are Trojans. On the server computer, Trojans are not really that much of an issue, because no one is supposed to use a computer server as a browser, okay, to run like Chrome on the server to browse the web, okay. On the client computer, on the other hand, that becomes an issue. And by the way, what exactly is a client computer as opposed to a server computer?
We are using client computers. The server computers are the ones that give us, let's say, web pages, databases,
Yep.
MySQL servers,
Yep.
all sorts of types of things that don't need human interaction on an hourly basis, even a daily basis sometimes.
Exactly. Okay. That's a very good summary. So basically, a client computer is one that is used by a end user. Okay. Right? We are all end users in this classroom. So all of the computers that you're using in front of you, they are all basically client computers. It has to do with the fact that we are running client software on these computers. I'm using Chrome right now. Okay, it's a web browser. But what is the technical name of a web browser? It's an HTTP something. HTTP refers to the protocol that it understands. Is it HTTP server or HTTP client? Is this program making requests, or is it answering requests from the HTTP perspective?
Oh, this is an HTTP client.
It's an HTTP client, because whenever I click on something, it is making a request, sending the request to a server, and waiting for the server to respond with the content that I'm requesting. Okay. What about SSH? Okay, if I want to SSH into, let's say, the Power server, like so, is this SSH the client program, or is it the server program? Am I making a request, or am I answering a request?
You're making the request.
I'm making a request. Exactly, I'm making a request to log into the Power server, as in this case, the user into the Power server. Okay, so for the most part, if you're using a computer intended for end users, it is a client computer. Most servers are sitting somewhere in a closet, in a locked room, and those are the server computers. Are we doing okay so far? Okay. I'm running out of time today, so what I can do is I can continue this with a recorded lecture that I can record at home, so that way you can also watch it on YouTube. Okay. In addition to this part, which you guys probably will not have to watch this part again, but in case you do, it's on YouTube. But I will also do some recording at home to record the other portion of the material to talk about Trojans, and then on top of that, we will also get started with QEMU and also the various alternatives to run Linux on your home machine as well as these machines. Okay, because I want to make sure that all of you know how to get started with your homework assignments, and it depends a lot on what type of computers you have, whether you can do a boot from a USB thumb drive, or whether you can run QEMU or VMware. Okay. Any questions? Go ahead.
Could you go over it again on how to get your lectures on YouTube? I know some problems.
Okay, you go to, okay, let me just start with a new browser. Oh, that's probably not a good one. I'll just use this one. I signed in as a different person, so that really is helpful. So what you do is you look for some profs. The other way to do this is to do it like this. You can just type youtube.com/ and then just some profs. That will get you to the channel right away. And once you get to the channel,
Yeah, I'm at the channel.
oh, you're at the channel?
Yeah.
Okay, once you're at the channel, you want to click videos as a tab. And once you get to videos, I mean, this lecture is obviously not online yet because I have not had a chance to upload it. But once I upload it, it will display here.
All right.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If you put that path in, it'll just go straight to it. That the whole YouTube.
Yes,
slash
if you
user
give you
slash-
the entire path, user / some profs / videos, it should bring you to this page directly. But that's a lot of stuff to type. So I just type some, click some, and then get
Probably
here.
wants this in there.
Right. So that's the end of today's lecture. Until I know that you guys can set up the infrastructure necessary to do the homework, I cannot really assign a whole lot of homework. I can give you some really simple multiple choice questions regarding stuff that we have talked about so far, and also regarding computer security in general, but not specific to Linux. Go ahead.
Do you have time to go over, even offline, the different methods that we can use our computers to download the software, what we need to do?
We can do that on Thursday, or I can cover some of that material using my online video first, and then on Thursday, you guys can report back and say which method works best for you. Okay, go ahead.
I was basically going to ask the same thing, which one you preferred us using, the emulator or the VMware?
My personal favorite is to use the live distribution because it is one single, set of tools. It has everything that I need to install already. If I don't, I can make another one of these.
So we get that for free besides the...
Oh yeah, it is completely for free. For those of you who want to kind of move a little bit ahead of the class, you can go to the Power server, just power.arc.losrios.edu. The recording is still going, so this part is still getting recorded. So once you get to power.arc.losrios.edu, you can go to where is it? Dr. Tech's Debian Live CD, and that link will download a 2.2 gigabyte file that you can either burn on a DVD, which is probably more reliable. It works on most machines. You can boot from a DVD. You can also quote-unquote burn that onto a USB thumb drive. And I'll talk about how to quote-unquote burn something onto a thumb drive because it's not as easy as just moving a file onto a thumb drive. It involves a little bit more than that.
What does that say?
It says Dr. Tech's Debian Live CD.
Oh, Debian.
Not the installer. You don't want to get the installer because you just want to get the live CD. It's an ISO file. You can burn it onto a DVD. That probably is it's a slower way to do it, but it's a more sure way to do it.
Well, so you can't download it straight from the web to your PC or something like that?
Yeah, you can download it onto your PC, but once you get it onto your PC, you have to burn it onto a DVD. And then you put your DVD onto your DVD drive, into your DVD drive, and then you reboot your machine, and you have to set up your BIOS to boot from your DVD drive before the hard drive.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's booting off of the I got you.
We're not doing anything distribution specific, right?
I don't think anything is particularly distribution specific. The location of configuration files, I think with Debian type installation, is in /etc mostly, and then on Red Hat systems, it can be somewhere else. Yep. But it's not that's not a big issue.
Has
Right.
people tried burning it on using their Microsoft tools to burn the DVD?
That should work. If that doesn't work, you can download and install Infra Recorder, which is an open source CD burner. So that will work as well.
there's also a flash drive where it makes an ISO file, go to Yum.
I was trying to add the